The forest biome in Minecraft has always been in need of more life added to it. And with the spring drop update approaching, there could be a surprise with the introduction of new forest mobs. And with the forest being one of the most common biomes, that means there is lots of potential for some new mobs that could have a chance of making their way to the forest biome in the next update. Hey yo, I'm Creato, and today I'm showing you 10 mobs that would fit perfectly in the forest biome and should still be added in the upcoming spring drop update to help make the forest feel more alive. A good place to start would be by adding in new types of birds that could fly around and live in the forests. And they could be similar to tropical fish in the ocean in the way that birds could also spawn in lots of different colors and sizes. This would make it so that there would be lots of variety for the way birds spawn, so that you would be able to walk around the forest and see all of the different colors of birds. And not only would it be fun to look at all the birds flying around, but it would also really help with the ambience of the forest biomes, since birds are probably the most simple mob that could be added to the forests. And who knows, with how much more life and color birds could potentially add to the forest biome, maybe that means they also have the highest chance of being added and might just be the next mob added to live in forests. And with the potential for birds being added, that also means there could be even more forest-themed mobs added to further improve the overall forest ambience. And squirrels would also make a really good addition, since they would like to run around and climb up all of the trees. And squirrels could also have their own variants too, with some of them being darker and some of them having a spotted pattern as another way to bring in more variety to the forests. And maybe squirrels could also bring a new bush type, like a peanut bush or acorns, since squirrels would need something to eat, and a new bush type would make the perfect companion for squirrels. This would just be a way to make squirrels something a bit more than just ambience. Since if they were to bring in a new bush type, not only would that add a bush to forest, but it would also give squirrels a fun way to interact with the bushes. And squirrels could also have a fun behavior of being able to climb up and down the trees, so that you'd be able to walk around the forest and see all the squirrels quickly running around the place. And since the forest could also use some bigger mobs, that means deers would be the perfect addition to forests so that some larger mobs could live there. This would mean that deers would be much more noticeable since they would be quite a bit bigger than the other mobs. And deers would have their own variants as well, with one type of deer having antlers on its head, while the other variant wouldn't have any. This would help to give different looks to each of the deers and make it so they're not all the same. And since deers are a larger mob, that would mean they could also be breedable, which means there would also be baby deers running around the forests. This would make it so that there would be even more types of deers, which helps to add more variety to each mob that gets added. And since deers like to run around a lot, maybe that means they would try and hide each time you get close to them, which would be a new behavior no other mob has. This could just be another way to make deers more interesting, since their main purpose would just be to fill up the forest and make the place feel more like a forest. And going back to some smaller mob ideas, maybe hedgehogs could also get added, since they would be a perfect little mob to walk around the forest biome. Hedgehogs could be purely for ambience, since all they like to do is simply walk around and live their best lives in the forest. This would mean that each time you were walking around a forest biome, you would have the chance to come across a small group of hedgehogs traveling together. And maybe hedgehogs could also be breedable as well, so that they can have a little baby hedgehog following them around the forest. This would help to complete the little hedgehog family, so that there would also be a bit more variety to them. And maybe there could be a bit more to the hedgehogs, like watching them sleep during the daytime, or maybe being able to feed them with a special item. This would just be a few ways to add an interactive element to the hedgehogs, so you can do something with them as they are all walking around the forest. Also, if you're enjoying the video, please make sure to leave a like and hit subscribe, as all your support really means a lot. And another mob that could roam the forest could be bears, which would be the biggest mobs in forests, and also the mob that makes the most sense to live in forests. And since bears love honey so much, maybe they could have a special interaction with beehives, like being able to collect them and drop the honey on the ground. This would be an interesting way for bears to be able to interact with the environment while also connecting them to an already existing feature with the beehives. And bears could also be breedable, so that they can make some baby bears, which would be really playful and love to run and jump around. And maybe the baby bears could also have their own interaction with beehives by trying to reach them up in the trees. This would be another way to make the bears more interesting, since they would for sure be the biggest mob that spawns in forests while also having the most potential to have the most unique features. And going back to a smaller mob again, there could also be beavers, which would also like to walk around the forest, but also have a bit more going for them compared to the other mobs. Maybe beavers could also be able to swim in the rivers near forests, since beavers also love to swim around. This would mean the beavers could walk around the forest for a while and then take a dip in the river and head back to the forest whenever they feel like it. And maybe beavers could also have some interesting interaction with the trees, since beavers love to chew on logs as well. Maybe beavers would be able to slowly chip away at the logs and drop each log as an item on the ground, so you can pass by and collect it whenever you find one. This would have to be a very slow process, though, since otherwise the beavers would tear down the entire forest by themselves. But it's just a way to make the beavers a bit more interactive with the forest environment around them. And another mob that could be interactive with the environment could be owls, which could be a forest mob that would only spawn during the nighttime. This would make owls a bit tricky to find since you would have to wait for night, and then you would have to walk around in the dark trying to find one. But maybe owls could also have their own ambient sounds as well, so that there would be some nighttime owl sounds as you walk around the forest during night. And owls could also have their own variants as well, with a white variant that would spawn in the snowy forest biomes. This would help to give more variety to the owls, while also giving them a different look for each of the biomes they could spawn in. And it would also be another way to add more to the other forest biomes as well, instead of just a normal forest biome. But overall, owls would be the perfect addition to forests, since they would be the only forest mob that is more active at night and would help to give off the nighttime forest feel by watching them sit on the trees. And going back to the daytime, the perfect mob for that would be butterflies, which could spawn in large groups and could fly around the forest biome together. Butterflies would also love to sit around the flowers and could maybe have a special behavior with them. Maybe if you were to hold a flower, all of the butterflies could follow you, so that you could also walk around with a large group of butterflies flying around the place. But the main purpose for the butterflies would be to just fly around on their own, since watching all of them fly around would give off some really nice forest ambience, which is exactly what the forest needs. And with lots of butterflies flying around, it would help a lot to make the forest feel more alive, since butterflies are probably the most simple yet impactful mob that could be added to improve the forest biome experience. And another smaller mob that would fit in the forest biome would be raccoons, which would be a mischievous little mob that likes to grab items and run around with them. Raccoons would also like to sleep during the daytime, which means that you would often find them sleeping under the trees throughout most of the day. And then when they're awake, raccoons will be sure to cause trouble as they run around the forest and pick up any items they can find, like saplings and sticks, and then run off with them. Raccoons would also be able to eat any food item they can find, which will probably include things like apples and seeds, since that is what is usually found on the ground in forests. And raccoons would also be breedable, which means there will also be little baby raccoons running around the forest, which will probably cause even more trouble than the adult raccoons. But overall, raccoons would make a fun addition to the forest, while also giving a mob to chase around as it runs away with any item it can find laying around. And finally, another mob that could be added to forests could be snails, which would be seen slowly moving around the ground. And while all the other mobs are quickly running around the place, snails would be the exact opposite and prefer to slow things down and just appreciate the small things in life. And snails would also spawn in lots of different colors to make the forest look more colorful, while also slowly sliding around the ground. And since snails would move much slower than the other mobs, that also means you can get much closer to one and get a better look at the smallest mob that could live in the forests. This would make snails a nice mob that is different than the rest of the other fast-paced mobs, which are always moving around. And with snails being added, it would make the forest have more variety in terms of the mobs that could spawn in there, which is perfect since the forest biome has been lacking something different from the other biomes for a very long time. So what do you think about the spring drop update potentially adding in more mobs to the forest biome? What other mobs do you think should be added to the forest biome? And what other behaviors and mechanics do you think these mobs could bring into the forest? That's all for today. Don't forget to leave a like and hit subscribe, and also comment fun forest friends if you made it this far. Thanks so much for watching.